What in the foul reaches was that?
My patience is short.
I
with
warn
my
you,
blade,
stranger.
Saren.
Vulgarity has no place in Sacrament.
So we've played the co-op patch for around 5 hours now, and I've got to say they really improved the game massively. All the new things they added and fixed just make the game so much better, but they are doing it again, where all these fixes and new mechanics improve the game. At the same time, they also added another artificial restriction. Now before I get to that, let me start with the positives. They nailed the co-op experience. Straight up, this has to be one of the best ways to implement a co-op loot system and shared world. Having a shared realm is a very smart design choice. If one of us disconnects, we can instantly reconnect and everything stays in sync with what the other player was doing. For example, I disconnected in the middle of a cinematic, and when I reconnected about 20 seconds later, I was still in the same cinematic right until the end. Me and my wife had a blast playing this. The amount of variety in weapons also feels really good now. We got so many options just in the starting area, especially now that we can find more rings. I had instances in the Breach patch where I played for 6 or 7 hours, almost finished the game and barely found one ring, and that was from the Greenwich shop instead of a drop. So yeah, itemization has massively improved. The trading system is also okay, but it could be better. Instead of interacting with the other player, then opening a window, then trading inside that window, they could have just made a simple button to press on an item and send it directly to the desired party member, similar to how it works in Enshrouded. Firstly, because interacting with another player is quite finicky. A lot of the time we kept readjusting and missing the interact button, to the point where we actually started getting angry at each other. And it wasn't even our fault. The interaction option kept glitching in and out. As for the way we played, we started with a halberd and a scythe. Then both of us went archers, and finally I decided one of us should be an archer and the other a tank. The bows are now really interesting. The type of quiver you use determines the element, but all the arrows feel very similar. It's like instead of shooting arrows, you're throwing bombs all over the place. It actually feels nice, but at the same time there are so many effects on screen that you can barely tell what's happening. I'm not sure if this is a bug or intended, but all arrows feel like explosive projectiles. We ended up going with a tank and an archer, mostly because we kept hitting each other. It might sound strange, but I actually like this system. You need to be more careful around your teammates when swinging a weapon, and it adds another layer of combat awareness and tactics. So basically the way we mostly played was my wife shooting ice arrows while I tanked, and when the enemy froze, I used the charged attack to shatter them. It's an incredibly effective synergy. I also haven't tested all the elements yet, but I added fire damage on block, and now it seems the burn effect actually applies to enemies. So it looks like they fixed the deal damage on block elemental effects. Weapons also have a new critical mechanic now, which is very welcome. So far, I've also found weapons that can deal bleeding damage. Basically, when enemies move, they take damage. I also want to mention the farming system changes. They added a red indicator that shows exactly when you need to press to get perfect hits. I didn't realize how addictive this system actually was. Huge win for the grinding community. They also fixed a lot of paths. There were ways to reach certain areas faster before, but now you can't. For example, in the Nameless path, there was a way to jump directly from the elevator to the top area and skip a lot of walking, but now we couldn't do that anymore, or at least we weren't able to. There's also something a bit weird I noticed with NPCs. They feel slightly larger than the player. Maybe it's just me. Another addition is a new stat on some weapons called Frigid. It seems very random, and I've only encountered it on weapons I personally crafted. This effect can actually break your synergy. For example, I got one where I gained Ice Infusion but had reduced damage. On paper this sounds cool, but if your entire synergy relies on your partner applying ice and you shattering enemies with physical attacks, having Ice Infusion on your weapon makes that completely useless. It would have been nice to be able to re-roll this Frigid effect, but it seems permanent. Once you get to Sacrament, you'll discover a few new things as well. The new blueprint crafting table is a very welcome addition. We can finally craft the stuff we actually need, and I really like it. Even the random way of getting blueprints feels good. It doesn't take that long to roll until you find what you want. That said, I was a bit sad to see that Tongue Splitter, which in my opinion is one of the best early game strength one-handed weapons, is no longer at the blacksmith. So I had to use the table and keep rolling until I found it. It costs 3 papers per roll, and if your RNG is really bad, you could need up to 24 papers. I got lucky and found it on my second try. They also introduced training dummies in Sacrament, and what's amazing is that they don't just sit there taking hits, they actually attack back. You can test weapons builds or just practice parrying. This is a massive win for anyone who likes experimenting with different builds. Now onto the cons of this patch. In the previous Breach patch, they introduced the hunger mechanic. No matter how much they try to explain its existence, I still think it's a bad design choice. It's there to limit you, halt progression, and make the game unnecessarily more tedious. And don't tell me, just use the healing aura rune. What if I want to make a build that doesn't rely on focus? Anyway, I'm getting off track. The big issue they introduced in this co-op patch is the limitation on enchantment effects. And honestly, what were they thinking?
We also limited the amount of times you can re-roll enchantments on your items. It was a little too easy breezy to get your perfect gear on our Breach Refined update, so this should help to make really good rolls feel even more valuable.
I watched their video, saw this mechanic, and thought, okay, maybe it's not that bad. Then I went into the game and spent 10 embers just to get a slightly better negative effect on a plague weapon. And after that, I was out of options for the rest of the effects. So now I have a good weapon with one decent roll, and the rest I can't touch because I hit a limit. If you get bad RNG and bad rolls early, the weapon becomes completely useless. I'm sorry, but this genuinely broke me. We spent 5 hours farming together, finally got enough to craft a good weapon, and then everything fell apart because I hit the limit on how many times I could use embers on it. They added so many good, smaller changes, especially the blueprint crafting, only for it all to fall apart once you reach enchantments. I genuinely can't understand why this is limited. I really can't see the vision here. Who thought this was a good idea? This is an artificial restriction. It exists purely to slow progress, not because of balance or technical reasons. It's forced pacing, controlling how fast players can progress, instead of letting skill or mastery decide. It's a retention wall, where progress stops unless you wait, grind, or repeat content. Call it whatever you want, but it completely breaks the pacing of the game. And yeah, it sucks to be negative about the game I love this much, but some mechanics just make the experience worse. Crafting materials are already extremely hard to get. After you finally gather them and craft your weapon, you go back into RNG trying to get it to purple enchantment, and once you finally do, you're hit with another restriction when trying to change the effects. It just feels cheap and unfulfilling. It feels bad. The best solution would be to remove this limitation entirely, or if they really want to keep it, at least double the resource gain on the hardest difficulty. There's no point in having a hard difficulty if there's no meaningful reward for it, but that's just my personal opinion. Overall, I think this co-op patch did an incredible job adding new mechanics, fixing old ones, and making co-op genuinely fun. But the mid-game and end-game will suffer heavily because of weapon restrictions. The further you progress, the more important your weapon's damage and effects become, and putting limits on that turns progression into an artificial and unnecessary grind where you're forced to constantly craft and enhance new weapons just to stay viable. That's it. I'm really curious what you think about this new co-op patch. If you had a different experience or opinion, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Fuck.